Welcome, everyone. This is the DFS Bum. All right, we are finally here. Super Bowl. Kansas City Chiefs and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Should be an amazing game. So, before we start talking about the game and the players and our strategy, please subscribe to the channel if you have not yet done so. I would greatly appreciate that. So, all right, guys. I guess first things off, looks like everybody's going to be relatively healthy. So, that's good. So, we don't necessarily need to mine, some like fourth or fifth receiver that might be in the playing rotation now, or third or fourth, tight end or running back. It looks like it's going to be our core guys, so that's good. And then the second thing that I think when we're coming to something like the Super Bowl is really trying to maybe come up with like your overall strategy and how you're going to approach these tournaments. For me, it's like the last game of the year. There's a ton of money on the line. There's a ton of different tournaments. So I end up when it's all said and done with, I'll have at least 300 lineups. I know that's how it'll go for me. I basically just sprinkle them all out in all these different tournaments. And depending on what your bankroll is, and if you're a newer player, there's even tournaments that are 5 cents and 25 cents. So you can max enter there if you like. Experienced players like myself aren't allowed to play in them. I can't play in anything that's under $3. And then there's some contests that are $3, but experienced players aren't allowed to play in those as well. So if you're newer or have a smaller bankroll, those are things to look at. And then from there, what I've come to find out for me personally is this will be my strategy. Is you figure, Mahomes is going to be hand down the highest MVP candidate, particularly on FanDuel. I'd imagine it'll be the same thing on DraftKings. And over the last couple of years, if you go and you look at all the showdown slates that the Chiefs have played in, when Mahomes ends up winning or is MVP and he's in that winning lineup, it seems like there's relatively big ties with that. And so for me, I think what my strategy is going to end up being this year, or not think, I know this is going to be my strategy, is so there's the main tournament, which has $1 million for first on FanDuel, and I'm almost certain it's the same thing on DraftKings. I don't think I'm going to put Mahomes in any of those lineups into that big one. And what I'll do is there's a sub tournament that's, and I'll back up real quick. So this one, so for example, on FanDuel, I think it's like $4.44 or something like that to enter. And there's like, I think, maybe like 900,000 people to fill this tournament or something crazy like that. It's $1 million for first place. So from there, I figure like, hey, let's go a little bit more contrarian in this big tournament. If something fucking crazy happens, let's just take down maybe an insane amount of money potentially. Last year, for example, Husick, I think that's how you pronounce it, but the fullback for the 49ers, he ended up being on that winning lineup. And it wasn't really all that unique group of players per se, but it was like on FanDuel, it ended up being like first place was split maybe amongst, I don't know, like 10 people or so. And it was like $180,000 if I remember correctly. It may have been over 280, something like that, but it was well over six figures. So for me, that's what I on FanDuel, like I say, is I don't see myself probably having Mahomes since that big one is MVP, just because I know he's going to be more highly owned. And then what I'll do, there's a subcategory tournament or sub tournament, which only has about 50,000 people. It's $9 down there, and it's 100,000 for first. So what I think I'm going to do is take all of my lineups with Mahomes, and I might take some of the lineups that might have, like, say, Brady, Kelsey, and Hill as well. I feel those guys are going to be our top four MVP candidates for this game. And maybe what I even do too is let's just say I've used all the salary and there's no money left over, which was going to tend to be more of a tie. Maybe I'll just take some of these and I might put those in some of these smaller tournaments. And my whole thought process on this as well is what I found is sometimes if you go in the smaller tournament and actually has a smaller amount for first place, when there's big ties, you actually end up winning more in the smaller tournaments. That's happened to me. It's somewhat common. And if you, and maybe it's not, maybe it's not quite as high, but it's not like in this case, it's not like so millions for first and it's like 100,000 in the other one. It's not like the tournament where it's $1 million, like it's 10 times more. I've just honestly never really seen it work out that way. So for me, like I say, I think that's what I'll do is I'll probably take, let's say, I mean, maybe I'll just do it with quarterbacks, and then I'll just keep the skill positions in the big one. Ultimately, I'll have to get into lineups, but I could see myself doing something like in that smaller tournament. Maybe I do 75, maybe even like say 100 lineups with Mahomes, just because I think he's gonna probably be the MVP candidate. Let's say I'll do 100 with him, and then I'll do 50 other with Brady, and then from there I'll go and then I'll just build lineups with the skill positions, 150 other lineups, and then I'll take that into guys like Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce. I'll go Godwin. Uh, you got Evans, maybe throw in like Fournette, maybe Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Darrell Williams would probably be a nice dark horse guy, things like that. So again, I think this video is just kind of our first look video. I think these are just kind of some things to think about, is like, what's your strategy going to be? How much bankroll are you going to devote to this tournament? And here's something though too, is so I just mentioned, here's my strategy. I'm going to do the contrarian play on the big tournament. Now, if you don't want to do that, or maybe you're just going to do a handful of lineups, you can take that and use that to your advantage, because most of the players that are experienced players, particularly the guys that do 150 lineups, they're going to have more contrarian plays in that big tournament as well. So you'll just see some fucking crazy ass lineups in there, guarantee it. And their thought is like, why not? Especially those guys, they have so much bankroll, and for them, they're going to get into that tournament for a little over $600, which is just pennies to some of the big time players that literally doing maybe like up to $10,000 a day, or thousands of $10,000 a day in different DFS things. So to them, that's nothing. So that being said, is if you're just doing a handful of lineups and maybe not doing that 150 max, or even if the 150 max, you could kind of take that knowledge and just be like, all right, hey, I don't really care if there's about $1 million, I just want to win, and I don't really care if it's a big tie. And I know that if I just stick to this real core group of players, in fact, if you even maybe just did like 10 or 20 lineups in that big tournament, or maybe you had like $100 budget and just really worked with a small, good core group of players and then do any reaches, chances are you probably end up doing pretty well, make some money on it. So those are just some things to consider from that. And then I think right now I'll end up doing another video, just because it's almost 2 weeks away. They've got potential for some more injuries that might come up like that, but we'll just kind of go through the players just real quick. I'm not going to get into the salaries and things right now, but we'll just kind of look at them at the matchups, and then I'm going to do another video probably like maybe that like Thursday before the Super Bowl. By then, everything should be really clear if there are any injuries, if anything pops up. So quarterback wise, Mahomes and Brady, they're both great players. Mahomes, matchup wise, going against the Bucs, they're 10th overall defense, they're 14th against opposing quarterbacks. So it's just, and Mahomes, I don't know if at this point that really matters, like how good the defense is. At least it's not like a top 5 defense or anything like that. So you expect him to have a good day. Last week, 26 points. Prior to that, had 22 points, and he went out of that game early with a concussion. Now we go to Tom Brady. With him, going against the Chiefs, 16th overall defense, 21st against opposing quarterbacks. So we've got a nice matchup. Brady in the playoffs, he had 20 points last week, and 22, and 23 in that wild card round. So just steady Eddie production with Mr. Brady there. As far as the receivers they're throwing to, when we're looking at the Chief receivers going against Tampa Bay, they're also 10th against opposing receivers. Or excuse me, again, their overall defense, I should say, is 10th. So I'm just kind of repeating myself. When it comes to individual receivers, though, the Bucs are 19th against opposing receivers. So that bodes well for guys like Tyreek Hill and rest of that receiving core. On a side note, it looks like Sammy Watkins is going to play. So maybe, and actually it might, before I would have said maybe before, if Watkins is playing, I would have said maybe that impacts McCole Hardman over, say, Demarcus Robinson. But now maybe my thought has changed on that a little bit. That maybe if Watkins is playing, maybe Robinson is a little bit more hurt by that. I don't know, it's hard to say on that, but that's just one thing to mention. Also, too, it looks like Antonio Brown's going to play. And then as far as the Tampa Bay receivers, so again, the Chiefs' overall defense is 16th. Now, this is one thing when it comes to opposing receivers, they're really good at it. They're third. So in theory, guys like Evans, Godwin, that's going to be tougher for them. And those guys could definitely be interesting MVP candidates. I remember on FanDuel last week, and I kind of look at this being somewhat similar game. So if we go back there with the Packers, you got Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, Jones, and Brady. Those were like the main guys as far as MVP candidates, with Rodgers being like maybe, I want to say he was around 40%, and Devontae Adams is coming in behind him. And when you looked at Godwin and Evans, like they were in the MVP spot, it was maybe like 3% or 5% owned, something like that. So it was very, very small. So again, I would probably imagine, just because of Patrick Mahomes, of Tom Brady, Tyreek Hill, and Travis Kelce, that these guys, Godwin and Evans, in my mind, are probably two of the guys that I've got like that are actually, it's not like some crazy ass shit to happen for them to be the MVP. It very, very well could happen. And they're going to be lower owned. So that's probably not a bad place in my mind to play at. If you want to maybe take down, if you're in that big tournament, really any tournament, I feel that's going to give you, maybe make you a little bit more unique compared to just some of the other folks that are in there. If you want to make yourself real unique, and this happens somewhat common, but here's the deal is, take these guys and don't have Brady in the lineup. It happens all the time where you'll see somebody in there, and normally we want to stack the receiver with the quarterback, and that's normally would be a great strategy. It makes a ton of sense. But at times, example, going back in here, it might be this sort of situation. Let's say Tyreek Hill ends up being the MVP, and you have Mahomes and Brady. Well, Mahomes is 16,500 on FanDuel. Brady is 15,000 on DraftKings. And let's say Mahomes, scores like 24 points, and Brady scores 20, and Tyreek Hill is your MVP. And he scores like, say, 25 or whatever. But the reality is even though Mahomes scored more than Brady, it was just the salary is more expensive. So I could see something like that too. Like if you're going to be looking at guys like Kelce or Hill, and you want to be unique, maybe throw those guys in the MVP spot and don't have Mahomes in there as that quarterback. Another thing that is interesting too on FanDuel, I'm trying to think, and I don't know if I've ever seen a lineup that's been the number one lineup that's not had quarterback in there. I really don't know. I can't think. Maybe it happened last year. As far as I remember, maybe I missed a game, but they started doing these showdown slates in 2018. So we're going on 3 years now, and man, I tell you, I can't remember ever finishing it, the game like that. I will say this though, I've seen those lineups in and out of first place throughout the tournaments, and those are usually lower owned as well. Excuse me. So you could see in a game like this, when you have so many talented receivers and some good solid tight ends and running backs, that maybe that's another thing that you do potentially as well to make yourself a little bit different. All right, tight ends, matchup wise, Kelce going against the Bucs. The Bucs are 21st against opposing tight ends. Kelce is just playing unfreaking believable. 30 points last week, 21 before that, 19 and 19. I could say this guy is just a stud. Could see him being that MVP. Great guy, FanDuel or DraftKings. And then from here, Cameron Brate is kind of taken over basically Gronk as far in the passing game, it appears. Both of those guys are going to have nice matchups going against the Chiefs. They're 26 overall against opposing tight ends, so that bodes well. And then we go back and we look at the playoffs here with Brate. So he had 6 targets the first week, 5 and 5 points, 10, 7 and 9. And then Gronk's targets 1, 5, 1 points, 0, 2 and 3. Excuse me. Both their price tags are lower now, which makes sense, and they should be. Well, at least for Gronk, it should be. Cameron Brate's actually gone up a little bit, but both those guys are some interesting guys there. I don't think any of those guys to take that MVP. It certainly would make you contrarian, but again, like you're trying to be like realistic about this because are one of those guys going to score over 20 points? I just don't probably see it happening. And the reality is the high score for this game would probably be like in the mid 20s, I'd imagine. If not higher, low to mid 20s. Maybe maybe a guy like Mahomes goes over 30. I doubt you'll see some game where Kelsey or Hill go over 30, but it is possible. Particularly a guy like Tyreek Hill, maybe he just goes nuts in that game. But anyhow, the price being cheaper is probably what is maybe more attractive about him at this point in time. That's the one thing too with Gronk is like if he was still closer to that $8,000 and $9,000 price tag, you could probably see him being really low owned. The fact that he's so damn cheap and that he does got legit potential to get you points, like double digit points for a guy that's under 7,000. I mean, he's a pretty damn good option. A hell of a lot better than most other guys you'd usually see that around that, that are under 7,000. All right, running backs. So we go back here and we've got the guys with the Bucs guys. Their running backs going against Kansas City. Kansas City's 23rd overall. So you can really see them trying to utilize that. The Bucs trying to utilize that, take that advantage, really work the ball. Kind of a interesting situation here. You would probably see in the regular year that Ronald Jones was more the man, then he got banged up, and then Fournette is really, kind of come into his own in the playoffs here. So if we go back the last couple weeks, so last week Fournette carried the ball 12 times to Jones's 10. Fournette, this is a little bit surprising in the playoffs. I usually don't think of him being really utilized as much in the passing game, especially when they've got a guy like Jones. But he had 7 targets last week and 16 points. Jones didn't have any targets last week and only 2 points. The week prior, they had Fournette had 17 carries. Jones had 3. Fournette 6 targets. Jones 1. Fournette 19 points. Jones 6. And then we had that opening round of the wild card where Jones was active but didn't play. And in that game, Fournette had 19 carries, 4 targets, and 21 points. So Fournette is a guy, assuming that they're going to still continue to ride him. And I suppose even Jones, like, if I had to pick an MVP between the two, I would go with Fournette. Now, here's one thing maybe. If you guys are playing DraftKings, Jones is going to be cheaper on there. So if you're playing both sites, and you could do, like, kind of my strategy, too, and how you hedge your bet a little bit. You could leverage that between both sites the way that you play. Maybe one is more contrarian on one site and one is more traditional or more of like a cash lineup, so to speak. But those guys, given that the Chiefs maybe aren't as a top-notch run defense, that's another people that I could see along with like those receivers for the for the Buccaneers that like with Godwin and Evans, I could see Fournette and Jones, some other guys that got legit chance to maybe be that MVP and are going to be low owned and make you a little bit more different and unique. And then the other side of the ball, looks like Clyde Edwards-Helaire is still healthy. Chiefs in general going against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's number 2 overall run defense. So for me, and I think with Darrell Williams being, like example last week, so Edwards-Helaire played. He carried the ball 6 times to Darrell Williams 13 times. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 2 targets to Darrell Williams 1. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 7 points, Darrell Williams 13. And really, it's kind of funny, of that 7 points, literally 6 of those, or 6.1 or 2 or whatever the hell it was, came from that rushing touchdown that Edwards-Helaire had. So to some degree, Darrell Williams is even cheaper on FanDuel. He's cheaper on DraftKings too. He might actually be a better option just to have in general in your lineups. Le'Veon Bell is looks like he's healthy, but he's just not even, he's not going to be in my player pool, I don't think. Again, maybe I'll do a little bit just to try to make myself a little bit unique, but I just can't see it. I mean, if he was going to blow up, it would have been that that first game that the Chiefs played in the it wouldn't be the wild card round because they had that off, but that opening game that they had, the divisional round. Yeah, Le'Veon Bell just carried the ball twice, 2 targets that game at 1 point. So that's kind of nice that we can really just keep it to like basically these 4 running backs. I think that for me makes sense. And like I say, those other ways to be contrarian, that's more what I'll do with who the MVP is, as opposed to maybe going down and getting guys like Le'Veon Bell or Darwin Thompson or Keyshawn Vaughn, guys that, or LaShawn McCoy. Those guys are probably not going to be in the game. Or if they do, it's just for 1 or 2 plays. Again, there could be an injury, and so they get in there a little bit more, but I think there's other ways to make yourself maybe a little bit more unique without trying to get some guys that might never even see the damn field. And then speaking of unique, taking Williams or Edwards-Helaire into the MVP spot would also, I don't know how realistic that's going to be, but that would certainly make you unique. And then lastly, if kickers, kickers, these guys, I mean, they average both of them almost average 10 points. I just think the game is going to be too high scoring to have a kicker actually be the high scorer in there, but both those guys will definitely could see them in the lineup, and pretty common for that to happen. So anyhow, like those are just a few initial thoughts on it. Like I say, this is our first look. We'll get in later. Like I say, I'll do another video about 3 or 4 days out, just make sure there's no injury situations, and then we'll really dive in and go over all the pricings on both of them, and the deeper dive basically. But I just wanted to get a video out just because it's I don't know, it's just fun to talk about. It's the last game of the year, a shit ton of money on the line, and so anyhow, just to figure it'd be fun just to kind of talk about some of these concepts without really getting into the lineup construction, the players, and just overall approaches. So, all right, guys, go out and kick some ass. And then I think I can probably start working on some NBA videos. I've been really on the fence on that just this year with COVID and everything. And I'm personally not devoting hardly any of my bankroll in the NBA. I just play on like 1 or 2 game slates just because it's just too freaking... It's just too hard to try to figure out what the hell anyone's doing nowadays with COVID and everything, keeping track of it. I've just been too busy really to try to stay on top of it, which you need to do nowadays because there's so many value plays with different guys sitting out unexpectedly in load management. So the NBA is quite an animal this year compared to any other year. But anyway, I'll figure it out one way or another, and eventually either you'll see videos or you won't. So, all right, guys, but like I say, just keep your eyes peeled. And if you are playing the NBA, hope or any of the other DFS sports that goes, hope you guys are kicking some ass. So, all right, guys, peace out, and I'll talk to you soon. See ya. Bye.